My name's Fidan. I'm a family law solicitor practicing in Sydney, Australia, and today is Case Note Friday, so I'm going to talk to you about a real decision of the Federal Circuit and Family Court of Australia. Now, I'd like to give a trigger warning because some people may find some aspects of this case disturbing. It involves significant family violence. So there's your trigger warning. Swipe now if you don't want to hear it. First, I'll introduce the parties. We have Joe. Joe is aged 54 and he's unemployed. And we have Amy. Amy is 50 years old. She's a medical professional and she's been with Joe. They've been married for 15 years. They have two children, a son aged 19 and a daughter who's aged 12. We'll call the daughter Robin. So they've been together, as I said, for 15 years. In 2017, they separate. Now, they're both from the same country and immigrated to Australia. Joe's English isn't that great, but he gets by doing odd jobs. And as I said, she's a medical professional. In 2018, they separate. And that was because Amy wanted to separate from him. He didn't take it very well, but initially she just decided to remain living in the same home as him, mainly because he kept threatening to unalive himself if she ever left the home. So they stayed for another year, separated, living under the same roof. Then Amy got up the courage to physically leave. She took their children and moved into an investment property that she owned. He moved in with his brother. That was in 2019. So once she had escaped the family home, then the husband, Joe, decided to do something very, very strange and something quite confronting. He had earlier stolen a swipe card to her workplace. She'd noticed something was missing, but didn't know what happened to that swipe card. He'd stolen it, duplicated it, so he had a swipe card to her office. One day in the early hours of the morning, he breaks into her office. She's a medical practitioner, so I assume it's a clinic of some kind, and decides that he's going to commit an act that was so extraordinary. I'll show you the detail because this appears in the judgment. So he slashed his wrists, which caused significant bleeding, and then he proceeded to leave extensive blood splatters on various walls and drips of blood throughout the premises of her workplace. And as he moved about, he dripped and smeared the blood almost through every single room, on all of the walls, doors, floors, desks, medical equipment, examination beds, cupboards, bathroom chairs, sinks, kitchen services and equipment, including the microwave and the fridge. Computers and keyboards, medications, you get the idea. He was just on a rampage, smearing his blood whilst he's bleeding from his wrists all around her workplace. But he took it even further. He left handwritten messages on paper and placed them on various desks in the workplace, and an artwork of handprints of their kids, all containing the words "sorry" to X, that's the daughter, and Mr. N, that's the son, together with a note on the computer keyboard with the words "good luck" to her, Amy. He then thereafter lay on the examination bed in the mother's consulting rooms and fell asleep, presumably to bleed out and be found deceased the next morning. Shortly thereafter, the receptionist arrives to open up the office. She sees Joe's car in the car park and is somewhat suspicious because it shouldn't be there. As she heads towards the premises, she sees the front door slightly ajar and can see the graffitied walls in blood and doesn't enter the premises, is freaked out and just kind of pauses thinking, what do I do? However, Amy arrives shortly thereafter. She saw the car in the car park. She walks in the door and she's like, what the hell is this? She finds Joe passed out, wakes him up, administers emergency care. He's surrounded by a pool of blood and dry blood around his wrists. She calls the ambulance and she administers emergency care. It was admitted at the trial by him that she saved his life. The father was thereafter taken by ambulance to hospital for assessment and treatment. The father was diagnosed as having his self-inflicted wounds, which was deep enough to damage tendons. He was in hospital basically for a month and then released. Now, throughout the judgment, the judge refers to this incident as the retributive attempted suicide because he did it for her. He did it to get back at her and for her to know that this is the power she has over him. She was able to get a domestic violence order, which is a protection order. Now, somewhat surprisingly, in the aftermath of this incident, the mother facilitated time between the children and the father. It doesn't say why. It might have been out of fear. It might have been because she had PTSD. In any event, she did facilitate the time between the children and the father after this. She also provided meaningful financial support to him, including the payment of his legal fees in relation to the criminal charges and the rental expenses and provision of a motor vehicle. That's why I've given her the little Supergirl figure. So Jo survives. Now Amy, although a medical practitioner, is very triggered. She has PTSD and she's got a whole variety of symptoms as a result of that incident. And she was living in fear. She was so fearful of what he could do to her and the children. He had her and the children's names tattooed on him just so he could remind her that he'll always love her and she's the love of his life. So eventually he starts a court case, interestingly, not her. He starts a court case to seek more time with the children and to do a property settlement. They sort out the property settlement, and during the court proceedings, an independent children's lawyer is appointed for the kids. That's a lawyer for the kids. The independent children's lawyer and Jo and Amy go to an interim hearing to determine what time the father should have with the children. At the interim hearing, it is decided that the child, Robin, would spend time with the father on a supervised basis each alternate weekend for 2 hours, each alternate Sunday, just for 2 hours, but it was going to be supervised. So he had that time with his daughter, 2 hours supervised. Now that went on for about 2.5 years because the case kept getting delayed. They had an expert appointed, Dr. B, who interviewed everybody and had to come up with some conclusions as to what he thinks should happen. The mother by this stage had had significant psychological support, and her view was that Jo should have no time with their daughter Robin because there's an unacceptable level of risk. If ever that supervision went away, she was so fearful of what he would do because he has a personality disorder, of what he would do to their child, in particular to get back at her, and he had no insight into his own behaviour. So her application was no time between him and the daughter. The ICL, who's the independent children's lawyer, at the start of the trial said he should continue to have the supervised time. So she was going against the ICL, and that can be quite difficult. He was saying he wanted heaps of time. I think at one stage he wanted alternate weeks, and then he cut it back to alternate weekends. During the trial, the judge says he changed his mind a lot. And during the trial, his lawyers stopped acting for him and he ended up being self-represented with an interpreter, and the trial just took a very long time. Anyway, let's tell you what happened at the trial. When asked in cross-examination by the mother's counsel, the father was asked, "Do you understand that the mother fears for her life around you?" And he said, "How would I know? I don't know. I haven't talked to her in years." Yeah, he just lacked that insight into his own behaviour. The mother suffered from all of these things as a result of the father's behaviour and what he was doing to her. He was inflicting this psychological trauma onto her as a result of his behaviour. X met with Dr. B, the expert, with the ICL because she felt more comfortable having that person there. During the appointment, she was allowed to raise her hand when she didn't want to answer a certain question, which was fine. She expressed to the doctor initially that she's changed her mind. Initially, in the first time she was interviewed, she said she just wanted the adults to decide and keep her out of it because she knew that it would make her mum anxious if she spent time with her dad, and it would make her dad sad if she said she didn't want to spend time with him. The expert asked her, would it be okay if you spent no time with your dad, and pressed her for an answer, and she said it would be okay because the expert had significant concerns about the father's lack of insight into his own behaviour. The ultimate recommendations were supervised time 6 times a year, which we call identity time, just a couple of occasions, Father's Day, those sorts of celebrations, so that she could see her dad. So they went into the trial with that recommendation. The expert also found that the father had significant deficits in paternal parenting capacity, and he does not have the capacity to reliably meet Robin's emotional, relational and developmental needs or her special needs arising from the anxiety disorder and experience of adversities and changes in her life. Overall, the father impressed as a person incapable of taking responsibility for his actions and the impact those actions had on poor Amy. So what did the learned judge do? After reviewing all the evidence, he decided there was an unacceptable risk of harm for Robin to spend any time with her father. As a result of that, the mother got sole parental responsibility, Robin to live with her and have no time with her dad. The independent children's lawyer by the end of the trial also changed her mind and agreed with the mother's orders and said, after hearing the dad in the witness box, here's an unacceptable risk of harm.